The air at the BMW Championship wasn't just thick with humidity. It was thick with a tension that had nothing to do with the leaderboard. For 3 days, Scottie Scheffler had been doing what Scottie Scheffler does. He was dissecting the golf course with a cold, mechanical precision that had become his trademark. He was the world number one, the man who seemed to have traded his golf swing for a machine that produced nothing but fairways and greens. The narrative was already being written in the press tents. This was just another coronation, another week where the rest of the tour was simply playing for second place. The only drama left was whether he'd win by 3 shots or 5. But then, the winds of Castle Pines began to stir. A new variable was introduced, something no one saw coming. It started as a whisper on the practice green, a rumor that spread through the caddy shack like wildfire. It had nothing to do with a rival player's hot streak or a sudden change in the weather. This was something else entirely. This was a twist so unforeseen. It threatened to undo everything we thought we knew about the most dominant player in the world. The tournament didn't just change. It shifted on its axis. And what happened over the final holes was a shock that left even the hardened veterans on the course speechless. They say pressure makes diamonds. But what happens when the pressure isn't about winning? What happens when the pressure is about something far more personal, something that cuts to the very core of who Scottie Scheffler is? The answer, which played out in real time on national television, was a masterclass in raw, unscripted humanity that no one was prepared for. To understand the seismic shock that rocked the BMW Championship, you have to first understand the man at the center of it. Scottie Scheffler, at just 28 years old, had already carved out a legacy that most Hall of Famers could only dream of. He wasn't just the number one player in the world. He was an immovable object in a sport defined by its chaos. Coming into the penultimate event of the FedEx Cup playoffs, he had already secured 6 wins on the season, including a second Masters green jacket. His game was a fortress. It was built on a foundation of stoic calm, a relentless work ethic, and a humility that made him the most beloved and perhaps most feared player on the planet. He wasn't flashy like some of his contemporaries. He didn't possess the bombastic long drive of a Bryson DeChambeau or the swashbuckling flair of a Rory McIlroy. Scheffler was a surgeon. He was methodical. He was predictable in the best possible way. He went out, he played his game, and he won. The narrative around him was simple. You can't beat Scottie Scheffler unless Scottie Scheffler beats himself. And Scottie Scheffler almost never beat himself. The BMW Championship was supposed to be the final tune-up, the last hurdle before the season-ending Tour Championship. It was a stage set for Scheffler to deliver a statement, to remind the world that he was entering the postseason in a league of his own. The venue, Castle Pines Golf Club in Colorado, was a brute. Its high-altitude setting turned it into a bomber's paradise, where a well-struck drive could sail for miles. It was a track that favored the aggressive, the long hitters, the gamblers. Yet, even on a course seemingly built for a different style of play, Scheffler's clinical approach was thriving. He was grinding out pars like they were gold, waiting for his opponents to blink. On paper, it was a perfect match. A relentlessly consistent player on a course that would punish the reckless. It was a recipe for a Scheffler masterclass. But a championship isn't just about fairways and greens. It's a crucible of the mind, where a player's emotional fortitude is tested more than their swing. And this is where the story takes its first, unexpected turn. You see, Scheffler's strength has always been his ability to compartmentalize, to separate the noise of the world from the quiet of the fairway. He's famously grounded, often attributing his success to his faith and his family, particularly his wife Meredith. Their relationship is his anchor, the source of his calm. He often speaks about how she keeps him centered, that win or lose, his identity isn't defined by a golf score. It's a beautiful, admirable philosophy. But what happens when the anchor itself is the source of the storm? What happens when the one person who keeps him grounded is going through something that can't be ignored? This was the cruel twist that the scriptwriters of the PGA Tour didn't see coming. In the days leading up to the BMW Championship, while the sports media was analyzing his swing plane and his putting stroke, a private matter was unfolding. A story that would quickly overshadow everything happening on the course. It was a crisis that didn't originate from a missed putt or a bad bounce off a tree. It came from his personal life, a situation that was completely out of his control and threatened to unravel the very peace of mind he relied upon to win. As the tournament began and Scheffler was climbing the leaderboard, it became clear that something was different. There was a weight on his shoulders that had nothing to do with the heavy air of Colorado. He wasn't just playing for a trophy anymore. He was playing for something infinitely more important. He was playing while his heart was being pulled in a direction that had no relation to the 18th green at Castle Pines. The pressure was no longer just about his career. It was about his life. And that, as we were about to find out, changes everything. To understand what was really happening at Castle Pines, you have to look beyond the leaderboard and into the private world of Scottie Scheffler. The golf world knew him as the machine, the unflappable number one. But the man himself was navigating a reality that had nothing to do with fairways and greens. Just months earlier, Scheffler and his wife Meredith had welcomed their second son, Remy, into the world. It was a moment of pure joy, but it also signaled a seismic shift in his life. He had withdrawn from the Houston Open to be there for the birth, a decision that required no second thought. This was the first public sign that his priorities were changing. The man who had built his career on obsessive practice and grinding out every shot was now a father of two, and the center of his universe had expanded far beyond the ropes of the golf course. The demands of being the world number one are relentless. The travel, the media, the pressure to perform at every single event. But Scheffler had always managed it with a kind of serene discipline. Now, he was trying to manage all of that while being a present husband and father. He admitted that the dynamic at home had completely changed. Adding a second child, he said, was a whole different ballgame. The days of spending endless hours on the practice range were over. He wasn't able to spend as much time on the golf course as he did when he was younger, and he was honest about the adjustment. He had to prioritize, and for the first time, the golf was not the automatic priority. He had to be home at a reasonable hour. He had to help. He had to be a dad. This new reality was exhausting, but he welcomed it. As he put it, being tired at the end of the day meant you had a nice, full day. This was the new Scottie Scheffler, a man trying to find balance in a life that was anything but balanced. And then, just as the BMW Championship was getting underway, the delicate equilibrium he had constructed was shattered. The twist that the title promised wasn't a bad bounce or a rules controversy. It was something far more personal. Ted Scott, his caddy and one of his most trusted allies on the course, was forced to leave the tournament due to a family emergency back home in Louisiana. This wasn't just losing a caddy. It was losing his right-hand man, the person who carried the bag and the weight of his strategy. Ted Scott wasn't just an employee. He was a brother in arms. They had won majors together. They had navigated the highest pressure situations in the sport. He was the man who handed him the clubs, gave him the yardages, and knew the exact moment to offer a calming word or a kick in the pants. His sudden departure was a gut punch, a disruption that went far deeper than a simple change in staff. It was a stark reminder that off the course, life was happening. And sometimes, life doesn't care about your tee time. This left Scheffler in an impossible situation. He was the defending champion at the BMW, the top seed in the FedEx Cup, and he was suddenly scrambling for a replacement. He had to turn to Brad Payne, a longtime friend from the College Golf Fellowship, for the final round of the previous tournament. But Payne, while a trusted friend, wasn't a professional caddy. The dynamic was different. The rhythm was off. Scheffler admitted it was a challenge, that they were both double-checking each other's numbers because the trust that comes with years of partnership just wasn't there. For a player whose game is built on precision and routine, this was a significant hurdle. It's one thing to battle the golf course. It's another to battle the uncertainty of a broken routine. For the BMW Championship, he turned to Michael Cromie, a seasoned PGA Tour caddy who typically worked for Chris Kirk. On paper, it was a sensible solution. Cromie was a professional, he knew the ropes, and he worked hard. But this wasn't about paper. This was about chemistry. It was about the unspoken communication between a player and his looper. Scheffler acknowledged that they were both learning the course, and while it was fun, it was a far cry from the seamless partnership he had with Ted Scott. He was having to communicate basic things, like when he liked to snack and how he wanted the yardages presented. The mental energy he usually spent visualizing shots and executing strategy was now being diverted to managing a new relationship on the fly. The pressure wasn't just about winning anymore. It was about doing it alone, without the security blanket of his trusted partner. The foundation of his game, built on trust and routine, was suddenly looking shaky. And in the high-stakes environment of the BMW Championship, a shaky foundation is a disaster waiting to happen. The question wasn't just if he could win. It was if he could even keep it together. The first round of the BMW Championship got underway at Caves Valley Golf Club. The golf world watched with bated breath. The question wasn't whether Scottie Scheffler could win. The question was whether he could function. He had a new caddy, a new rhythm, and a weight on his shoulders that no one could see. For a player whose game is built on routine and trust, this was the ultimate test. Scheffler, true to his nature, tried to downplay the disruption. He spoke about Michael Cromie with genuine appreciation, calling him a great guy who works hard and does a good job. He acknowledged that they were both learning a new golf course together, and he tried to frame it as a fun challenge. But the cracks were beginning to show. The small things that make a player-caddy partnership work, the unspoken communication that develops over years of walking fairways together, were absent. Scheffler had to explain things that he had never thought about before. He had to teach a new partner when he liked to snack, how often he needed to drink, and exactly how he wanted his yardage communicated. When he said he was hitting a hold shot, he had to define what that meant. Every single shot required a conversation that would have been a simple nod with Ted Scott. It was like a pianist trying to perform a concerto on a borrowed instrument. The notes were the same, but the feel was completely wrong. Meanwhile, the true story behind Ted Scott's departure was slowly beginning to trickle out. It was far worse than anyone had imagined. Scott's nephew, Joel, had been involved in a tragic incident on a basketball court. An altercation had left the young man paralyzed below the neck. Scott had immediately returned home to Louisiana to be with his family. This was not a simple emergency. This was a life-altering tragedy, the kind that shatters a family's world in an instant. Scott had been on the bag for every one of Scheffler's 17 PGA Tour victories. They were more than player and caddy. They were brothers. And now, Scheffler's brother was dealing with a nightmare, and the number one player in the world could only watch from a distance, praying for a family he loved, while trying to win a golf tournament. Scheffler spoke about Scott with a gravity that cut through the usual sports cliches. He revealed that he had been able to talk to him a few times, and that the family was in good spirits. But he also made it painfully clear where the priority lay. "I think Ted's where he needs to be right now, and I think caddying is probably the last thing on his mind, as it should be," Scheffler said. It was a powerful statement, a reminder that even in the hyper-competitive world of professional golf, life is bigger than the game. Scheffler was not just playing for himself. He was carrying the weight of his partner's pain, and that is a burden that no amount of practice can prepare you for. The first round at Caves Valley was a grind. Scheffler's scorecard told a story of struggle. He finished the day well off the lead, ending with a score that was uncharacteristic of the man who had dominated the season. The golf course was there for the taking, but Scheffler looked lost. He was fighting his swing, yes, but more than that, he was fighting his mind. Every shot seemed to require an extra layer of calculation. The chemistry with Cromie was improving, but it wasn't the same. The safety net was gone. In the brutally honest world of the FedEx Cup playoffs, where every shot can mean hundreds of thousands of dollars, Scheffler was playing with a handicap that couldn't be measured in strokes. He was playing without his anchor. The second round of the BMW Championship at Caves Valley began with the golf world expecting more of the same struggle. Scheffler had been grinding, fighting his swing and his new partnership with Cromie, and the results were average at best. But then, something remarkable happened. The man who had been stumbling through the first round found something deep within himself, and he unleashed it in a way that reminded everyone why he was the number one player in the world. Scheffler opened his second round by turning the golf course into a personal playground. He began 6 shots behind the overnight leader, Sung J M, but quickly erased that deficit with a stunning display of aggressive golf. He made 6 birdies in his first 7 holes, including 5 in a row. It was a blitzkrieg, a statement that the world number one was not going to let a caddy change or a family tragedy define his tournament. By the time he walked off the course, he had carded an incredible 9 under par 61, matching the TPC Southwind course record. He had 11 birdies in total, a number that seemed almost absurd given the pressure he was under. The machine, it appeared, was back online. The performance was even more impressive considering the physical challenges he was facing. Scheffler revealed after the round that he had woken up with a sore back, a nagging pain that had been bothering him throughout the day. He admitted that the tightness was making it difficult to swing the club, and that he had been grinding all day just to make solid contact. On the 17th hole, he tried to hit a high draw and felt a sharp pain. It was the kind of ailment that would have derailed a lesser player, something that would have been an easy excuse for a poor performance. For Scheffler, it was just another obstacle to overcome. He shrugged it off, insisting he would be fine the next day. The pain was real, but his determination was stronger. The momentum from that round carried into the third. Scheffler entered the weekend with the lead, but he knew the hard part was just beginning. He wasn't as sharp as he had been on Friday, but he was still in control. He rolled in 4 birdies, had 2 bogeys, and carded 12 pars. The lead was down to 2 strokes, but he was still on top. The pressure, however, was mounting. He almost came undone on the 17th hole, missing the fairway and finding the greenside bunker. He rallied to make bogey, saving himself from what could have been a catastrophic blow. Then he bounced back with a par on the 18th to preserve his 2-shot advantage. He was surviving. He was grinding. And he was proving that even without his trusted partner, he could find a way to win. But the tournament wasn't over. The back 9 on Sunday would decide everything. And the question that lingered in the hot, humid air was, could he hold on, or was the weight of the week finally going to break him? The final round of the BMW Championship at Caves Valley Golf Club began with a narrative that seemed destined for heartbreak. Scottie Scheffler, the world #1, started the day 4 shots behind Robert McIntyre, the gritty Scot who had played brilliant golf all week. For Scheffler, this was a familiar position. He had overcome deficits before, but this was different. He was carrying the weight of his caddie's family tragedy. He was playing with a temporary partner, and he was facing a player who had absolutely nothing to lose. The early holes were a revelation. Scheffler didn't just chip away at the lead. He obliterated it. He went on a blistering run, erasing the 4-shot deficit in just 5 holes. It was the kind of start that defied logic. He was playing like a man possessed, as if all the frustration and worry of the week had been bottled up and was now being unleashed on the golf course. He made birdies look routine. He attacked pins that others feared. And by the time the front 9 was complete, the tournament had been completely flipped on its head. Scheffler was no longer chasing. He was leading. The machine, it seemed, had not only been repaired, but it was humming at a frequency that nobody could match. But McIntyre, true to his reputation, was not going to just fade away. He is a fighter, a player with a fierce competitive streak. As Scheffler would later admit, he knew that McIntyre's early mistakes were not going to continue. He knew the Scot was going to fight and claw his way back, and that is exactly what happened. The back 9 at Caves Valley became a brutal, back-and-forth battle. Every shot was magnified. Every mistake was punished. The lead changed hands. The momentum shifted like the wind, and the tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. This wasn't just a golf tournament anymore. It was a gladiatorial contest between 2 of the best in the world, both refusing to blink. Then came the moment that will be replayed for years. The 17th hole at Caves Valley is a daunting par 3. With a back right pin and water on the right, it is the kind of hole that can ruin a championship. Scheffler, clinging to a 1-shot lead, found himself in the left rough, the safe spot. But the shot he had to hit was treacherous. He was facing a chip of 82 feet that had to navigate the undulating green. It was a shot that required a combination of power and touch, a shot that had to be perfect. He struck the ball. It landed about 60 feet short, and then began its slow, agonizing roll. It picked up speed, lost speed, and then dropped on the final turn, tracking directly into the center of the cup for a miraculous birdie. The crowd erupted. It was one of the most iconic shots of his career, a moment of pure, unadulterated magic. And it all but sealed the victory. Scheffler closed with a 3-under par 67 for a 2-shot victory. It was his 5th win of the season and his 18th overall. He had become the first player since Tiger Woods in 2006 and 2007 to win at least 5 times on the PGA Tour in consecutive years. The numbers were staggering. The comparisons to Woods were inevitable. But for Scheffler, this wasn't about legacy or history. He had just won one of the most emotionally draining tournaments of his life. He had faced adversity on a level that went far beyond a bad round of golf. And he had triumphed. The championship was his. But as he walked off the 18th green, the embrace with his wife Meredith was not a celebration of a victory. It was a release. It was the culmination of a week that had tested him in ways no one could have predicted. He had held on. He had survived. And he had done it all with a heavy heart.